All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Moshe. Good afternoon, Belon.
Good afternoon, Siddharth. Good afternoon, Moshe.
So, as I welcome you all to this special edition of Celto Live, I would also like to say that it's a historic day for us in Maharashtra, especially for Belon and me, since today we have taken the first baby step to open and from the lockdown, 5th of June. So, it's a nice.
Congratulations. Congratulations, guys.
Well, I'm only laughing about it, but yeah, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We went into shutdown. The irony of it, when the cases were so small, it was so tiny, the number, and now we are opening up when the cases are peaking and record numbers daily. But
Yeah.
yep.
Well, like I've been saying for the last few hours to a very small collective of my close friends, we are now almost consistently third on the turnaround every day for the last 10 days, if not more, the highest number of cases in a day. And as of the last 24 hours, we are close to around 9,500 cases. And so, yeah, it's bothersome. I don't know, which is why I found it very difficult to react to Moshe's sentence, because I don't know how to process what's going on. Because rightly said, we went into a lockdown at a point when the case counts were very low. Unfortunately, it's not panned out the way it has. So there are a lot of things at play, which is why we are forced to now look at a unlock 1.0. So let's see where it goes. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, true. Fingers crossed, and let's hope for the best. So, Moshe, why
Yes,
don't you?
and I would like to quickly introduce our very special guest today at Celto Live. We have Belon Bombay, we have Siddharth Sood from our Celto Acoustic Experience Center in New Delhi, and about our special guest, Belon Fonseca, a two-time National Award winner, a two-time Filmfare Award winner, a sound designer, editor, mixer with over 24 years of work experience in sound engineering and over 70 feature film projects. A very good friend of mine. I know him since over 15 years, and I knew him as an educator, and I believe he's still an educator. He continues to educate people with the institutions he's associated with, and of course, his online sessions that he's conducting. Something that Belon and I share as a passion is the love for dogs. And I think both of us are enjoying our pets, our dogs. And moving ahead, I would like to not take much time and start with my first and obvious question to you, Belon, is why and how did you get into this field, and your journey that you could share with us, which, if I'm correct, it started with live sound with Roger Drago Sound, and way back in '93. And as they say in your industry, Bollywood, cut to, we have an accomplished Bollywood sound designer, award-winning sound engineer. So, if you could take us through this part of your journey.
I don't know how and where it started from. I think all I can remember is I was twiddling around with amplifiers and speakers from a very young age, mostly destroying them rather than getting them to work. uh, but I also think growing up in a Catholic family, you were exposed to a lot of music, and so there was a lot of music playing in the house. I blame my dad for the exposure I had in films, because every weekend would be film weekend. We'd go to a theater to watch something. I grew up in Bandra, Mumbai, and in those years, there was a metamorphosis happening at one of the theaters near my home, which from playing Hindi films started playing English films. And they did a very bizarre concept. They'd have a film change every 3 days. So you'd have the weekend play one film, Monday, Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday another, and then Wednesday, Thursday another. So there was a constant change of films happening at that theater. And so I remember the one instance where my dad said, "Hey, I think you need to go and watch this film." It was called Chariots of Fire.
Oh yeah.
So the funny part is also I was watching films of that nature back then that was doing something. It was ignorant to me what it was doing. It's evident now that it was doing something, but as a child you were, I mean, I grew up watching Star Wars. That was the biggest epic film I'd ever seen. I grew up knowing names like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg. Uh, and on the other side, there was Martin Scorsese. And then as you grew into reading stories about these people, you realize they were all friends and linked with each other. And I guess also the other little thing that played a role is Mehboob Studio. I grew up right behind Mehboob Studio. I was overlooking which I got to know much later, in my later teenage years. I grew up overlooking the recording studio. And so I was always mesmerized. I remember this one question I asked my dad one day. I said, "What's lyrics? What does it mean?" And so I think he attempted to explain it to me, but not in the best possible way that I could comprehend at that age. I always heard the orchestras, the choirs, right? The playback singers practicing in one back room. And I always wondered why they were going, "Do, do, 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 do," and they would keep on rehearsing. And then, of course, I also grew up in a family where my dad used to sing for a choir, and that choir was one of the biggest choirs in Mumbai at that time. They used to tour the world occasionally. So maybe all of these were adding up to the fascination of sound. And that kind of, I won't get into how I landed up working with Roger, but it was always, my first job was meant to always be with Roger Drago. I don't know the why and hows of it. I just know that, very briefly, I'll tell you a funny anecdote. I got into the college, that's St. Xavier's. They have a technical college in Mumbai. And I think I was the last name on that list that got into that college. And I remember my principal asking me, why do you want to do this course? I said, because this is what I want as an outcome. And he said, what will you do after that? I said, I want to work with Roger Drago. So 3 years later, when I finished this course, I was actually walking up to my principal's cabin to ask him for a recommendation letter for a completely different job. And call it coincidence. Maybe he had forgotten all about this conversation, but at that moment he may have remembered. And he said to me, "But weren't you the kid who wanted to work with Roger? Work in sound." He didn't say Roger. So I said, "Yeah, of course, that's still the dream. But I mean, this is a superbly high paying job I'm getting, and I'm a new kid on the block. Why not?" He says, "Well, I have a job for you. Will you take it?" I looked at him. He said, "It's a yes or no question. There's nothing in between." I said, "Of course, yes." I tore that letter in front of him, whatever had come with. He said, "Now there's no going back." I said, "I've torn the letter. Now I can't go back also." He says, "Well, go and meet Roger tomorrow morning." And so life has been a strange set of coincidences, which I think by the time we reach the end of this, we might be able to wrap a bow around it and explain why these coincidences could have happened. And it happens to all of us, I guess. I'm not an isolated case.
Absolutely.
So that's the start of my journey in sound. I worked just a year in live sound, but if you ask me, maybe I'm too old now to want to get back to it. But for the longest time, I think it's the biggest adrenaline rush you can ever have on a live gig.
Yeah.
And it's, you get one take to get it right. I think that's why it's the most exhilarating thing.
Right.
Now, while I come very close to emulating live sound because I record location sound and you usually get multiple takes to get it right, but sometimes that right take could also have a problem, and that makes it to the film. And so you have to work around those problems, but you get a chance to work around the problem. That's just the differentiation. You can't really say one job is better than the other, but yes, it all encompasses the whole arena of sound, which makes it so fascinating. I
Do you-
promise, Moshe, I keep my answers really short.
No, please
No,
don't.
no, please.
Please, you can keep them as. I mean, you know,
Telling
I'm
you,
sure.
people are genuinely interested in knowing this.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing just hearing the fact that you have gone through the grind of live sound. I mean, you know, the late hours and all. That was your first. I think.
It was not just late hours. I mean, it came with its own set of requirements way back. This is 1994. Here's the funny part. I think, as another anecdote, I think here's the funny twist in life that happened subsequently. uh, it's long hours, and I was 19. I was still studying and I was working. So I leave home at 7 in the morning and come back by sometimes 1, 2 in the night. Scrawny little kid, no muscle at all, not like I have any muscle now. And I come from a household where my dad had a 9 to 5 government job. You know, in whatever ranks that he grew through that company, you had paid leave, unpaid leave, medical leave. I mean, you could have stayed home the whole year and still got paid your salary. Not to say a government job was bad, but when you grow through a certain style of life, you know, you have your own impressions of what your children should do. And so I had to deal with the irony of it. I had to deal with was sometimes being checked, you know, and I wonder why he's checking me.
Eh,
I think
Checking.
he was checking my hands.
Okay.
And you
Okay.
know what happens here, right?
Oh, okay.
I was too
Okay,
young.
okay.
I was too
Right.
young to know all this stuff, and I would
Mm-hmm.
wonder, what the hell are you doing?
Mm.
So yes, there was a certain worry because of the business, right? Sound comes with its own worries of things that you can get into. Unfortunately, I'm one of those who's probably smoked up just once, and I hate the way it hits my throat. And I have,
Mm.
but I don't like it. I mean, I will have smoked a cigarette probably after 4 drinks when I'm amidst a good lot of friends, but I don't see it as a habit at all. So uh, I think it was that pressure that caused me to then have to leave, because it was constant: get a job in office, get a job in office, get a job in office.
Okay.
And so I quit this and got involved with a telecommunication company, because that was my core major when I finished off my engineering. Luckily, this was also at a point, strangely, I hated the job, but it was at a point when the stock market scam had happened with Harshad Mehta. And so this particular company dealt with hotlines within the stock market. And one of the key agendas was to be able to record conversations like you have today, where you hear an IVR saying this conversation might be recorded. This started way back in 95. And so I was doing a build with this engineer in Ahmedabad, I think. But I hated the job. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. Lucky for me, at 20 now, I was able to know I hated what I was doing, you know. So that's the second coincidence. I did what my parents wanted me to do. Uh, and then I was lucky to be able to recognize that I hated what I was doing explicitly, you know. I didn't enjoy waking up every day and doing what I was doing. It might have been awesome in the midst of research, but as a job, I don't think that was what I wanted to do as a 20-year-old. So I happened to stumble upon the only one ad in my life in a newspaper that I've applied to. And like most ads, you apply and then you forget about it, right? Because, I mean, what's the odds they're going to call a sound guy back to an interview? So I got called back to this interview. Again, a strange coincidence. I was interviewed by a bunch of 4 guys who had no clue of the world I came from as a 19-year-old. So I was obnoxiously arrogant and rude, I thought, in that interview, because they were asking me. I remember the classic question. They said, if the amplifier fails during the show, what will you do? Now, you guys are in live sound.
Hmm.
If an amplifier fails, what will you do? So my the answer was, there's a backup amp, we'll replace the cable and we move on.
Move
So
on.
when do you repair it? I said, you don't repair it.
Yeah,
Are
no
you?
chance.
I was like, are you kidding me?
Hmm.
Repair it while the gig's on. Have you ever engineered a gig? I'm just a rookie. It doesn't look like you even qualified to be a rookie. And that was my answer. And I got home and my dad was like, so how was the interview? And I said, they're never calling me back,
Yeah.
because I let them have it. And I was 20. I got really lucky and I got called back. I got hired. And it turns out I ended up working with a man called Shyam Ravanna at Crest Communication.
Okay.
So,
Rest.
yeah, he was a pioneer of his times, and I worked almost directly under him and his wife Seema. So that was the transition. I had no clue about post production, to be honest. Zero awareness of what post production meant. I knew about film, I knew about what was happening on television, but what went into making it happen. So I owe my life to him, because the things that he encouraged me to do comes very rarely to someone. And here comes the one bit of advice I would always give someone: you keep working hard. Okay, I knew that I hadn't come from film school. I knew I didn't have the principal backgrounds that are the fundamental building blocks for what I do. And so right from the time I worked with Roger to the time I moved on, I realized I had to work really hard to learn, because you were learning and applying what you were learning at the same time. And part of that also comes from then being able to listen patiently. So that ability came into life much later, because as a kid, when you're young, you're kind of,
Yeah.
you are a train on fire,
True.
wanting to run down the track.
Hmm.
And you want to be something by the time you're 21 or 22 and 23. So that's the journey. That was the transition, Moshe, which you asked me about. That's how I jumped into this whole world of film, which started with advertising to a small extent. Advertising never again caught me like a beast. It was always film. So I started moving slowly towards television at that point, but television in terms of sound design. So we would, the word started from back in 95, 96. I know that for sure. And we used to work on a couple of pilot episodes, because that's how it worked with television. And some of the things that they were working on hadn't been touched upon in television at that point. Very good content based shows. And I guess it's because of what I was doing, and I used to train, I used to kind of meet a lot of people. My foray into films happened, I guess. Again, coincidentally, the door opened, the first project came in. I said yes, had no clue what had to be done, how it had to be done. Uh, and most of them came in because we were working on this workstation called the Avid Audiovisual, which was
Yes.
the only second workstation in the country. The other one was in a Media Artist in Chennai. And Real Image used to be the deal, are the dealers still for Avid. Uh, and so I think the Avid brought my connection with Real Image and Senthil. Uh, by the time I was starting to work on film, India got exposed to something called DTS, the digital theater system, or the 5.1 sound reproduction format. By then, mixing was already running in my head, because I couldn't see it at that age, but I knew mix is what I wanted to do. And as I got into mix, I kind of stumbled upon how the two work together, sound design and mix. And then that's where all the magic happens. And I guess, well, that's synoptically the journey from live to post and from post to film. So what actually happened was, just to summarize that little bit of the journey, I decided the first time I ever bought myself my own flight ticket and decided to go to Chennai. I set up a meeting with Senthil and said, I've come to meet you. And he said, what do you want to do? So I said, well, I want to work for you guys. I want to mix film. This is what I think my life's about. I was 23 by then, I think. And then I had no answer from them. We had a lovely, probably 45-minute meeting. I talked about what I want to do with my life. I don't remember what that was. And then I flew back to Bombay, and then with a very heavy heart, I walked all the way up to the third floor to meet Sham in his cabin and said, "Sir, I'm planning on doing this with my life." And I remember him saying to me, he says, "If I try to stop you now, you'll stay for a few months, but it's your calling. And it's very rare that someone has a calling and they hear it so loudly. So go." That was the hardest thing, because he also said go. He didn't say stop and we'll do something with film. Or I don't know what would have happened if he had had a conversation beyond saying go. So I owe him. He, wherever he is in this world, I owe him a ton of gratitude and thanks, and of course to Seema, because without having such fantastic bosses, I would never have been able to fly. You know, they say spread your wings and fly. I would never have been able to fly so high with my dreams. It
Very
started
supportive.
from there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether supportive even cuts it.
Yeah.
They, I remember when the Avid Audivision was opened and we set it up on this temporary desk that I had. My first thing to Sham was, but I've never worked on something like this. I mean, I've never, what is this monstrous machine in front of me? And he sat down, he did something, because I was Sham. He just do something. This is how it works now. Here's the manual. It was an 800-page manual. Figure it out. And I
Okay.
said, what? I remember the words. I said, what if I damage the equipment? We'll buy another one. 23 lakhs. That was the cost of the workstation then. I remember very clearly, because I was involved with going to customs, clearing it. I had the bills. I was involved with setting it up along with the Avid Media Composer machines.
Back in 95.
This was 95. Yes.
23 lakhs.
Yeah.
That's over a CR if you
Yeah.
factor in this thing, today's inflation and everything and all that stuff.
It was expensive. I
That's
was
right.
really worried, because it was expensive piece of equipment. I mean, the Avids were very costly back then. And I would say very famously, these words would go down in history. He says, burn it and we'll buy another one. But so the mission statement, companies have mottos, right? It influenced my life. Nothing is impossible. So where impossible starts and the world ends, right, is where we start and the world begins. That's what the takeaway from Sham was. Because with Sham, I've had very famous anecdotes. One of which was when we were working on our first animation creation, which then went on to become a feature film many years later. But we were the foray into animation and voice matching phonetics and stuff. And I struggled because that's what a kid does, right? He struggles. And I, like a truant young child, went to him and said, "No, but this is," and I remember he was up on the first floor. I was on the landing. Again, a very famous story that most people would have heard when they say nothing is it's not possible. I said, "But it's kind of possible." And I was raving. And you know what? He used the F word, said, "Go home. I'll do it myself." And as would be, I stormed off home, came back the next morning, curiously looked on all the Avid machines, because he didn't work on my Audivision. He'd always work on the Avid. And I know he'd work on the 8000, 4000, whichever. I can't remember the model numbers now. He worked on the edit machine. And I went asking where he was working, found out, checked the machine. He had matched it all, bang on. I went sheepishly to him and said, "I'm really sorry." He said, "Yeah, you're a kid, no? You don't need your help, go." He never had to say that again in his life ever. So I had a great mentor in him that absorbed all of my childish moments, and it's taken a long to also lose the childish moments in me. I mean, Moshe would know that. But yeah, I think the summary of it is opportunities are always there, whatever they may be. They are not usually rewarding in terms of monetary gains, but I think that the 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 thing I had to contend with was, like I said earlier, I didn't come from film school, so I had to learn. And so that probably was a complex I did have for a very long time, that maybe I had to study really harder to learn more things. But the harder I studied, the more I learned. And the more I learned, the more it became insufficient. And so the more I wanted to learn. And so even today, with whatever I do, if I sit to do it, whatever, it's not about audio, it's about anything. If you want to learn it, luckily technology has advanced so much
Yeah.
that you can apply yourself to learn things in a very appropriate manner, not half-baked, because the answers are all there.
All there. Yeah.
Right.
You just have to have the tenacity to perseverance and the little bit of dedication to wait through the storm to learn it. So it's easier now. It's
Much.
just that our patience level possibly has dropped. We don't have the patience to sit down and absorb. We want it quicker. That's not going to happen.
True, very true. I see it. I mean, what you're saying, I see it in my kids today. I mean, today, as we all know, Google or YouTube are two of the most basic. I mean, if you want any answer or you want to know, I mean, there's a video tutorial, literally anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I see Karthik, our sound engineer, who's with us right now, who's behind. Whatever he doesn't know, he just quickly goes on to YouTube and he's already got the answers. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking, who should I ask? I realize that I'm still from a generation older. I'm thinking, yaar, kisse puchun, who'll have this thing? And actually, I feel the younger generation is able to adopt this. And I see it even faster in my kids. The way the other day I saw them, they're making a video of one of my younger daughters making one for her elder daughter, for her elder sister. And she downloaded apps on my iPad, and within 10 minutes she had whatever I was like, really? I was like, I look at it and I'm like, wait, who did this? And they already understand that there is an app. So they are not even, they're the app generation. We are still maybe if you look at laptop and things like, these guys are the app generation. And exactly as you said, Belon, that they adopt. So there's an answer to everything. And I feel that the younger generation is really adopting to it. Like they, on their phones and through apps, they're doing whatnot,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, from Sham, after Sham, was it
Real Dental.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, was RK Studios the first film venture, I mean, you got into?
RK Studios wasn't the first film venture, but I owe that bit to the youngest of the of the Kapoor family, Chimpu, as he's lovingly called. That's Rajiv Kapoor. For my foray into what ironically stitches that bit of my life together. So at Crest, it's now the time when film trailers are making it to television, right? And it was a new beast that was being born at that point. So Zee, Sony, the channels that were running these trailers, it became very famous and very fast. So RK Films was working on Prem Grunt at the time.
Yes.
And Crest was a hub where trailers would get cut. We didn't have working hours because you come and go as you pleased so long as the work was all done or when your booking was on. And with trailers happening, a very strange thing happened. I don't know which trailer. I think it was Prem Grunt itself. I remember the trailer ends with a what is that, Trishul. Then there's like a white light that goes across the glint. I can't remember it very clearly now, but I call it the very famous Balaji.
Yes.
Because I hate myself for having done this back then. And they loved it.
Oh.
Now, Chimpu, like I said, we all lovingly, the family calls him that. And so I also end up calling him Chimpu sir. And he say, "Yaar, sir mat bula, aaja, kya hai?" So he'd be there through the night because everybody works nights. The whole business was about nights. And we had a canteen and he'd be hanging out there. So one day I mustered the courage to say to him, "So whenever you all are doing a session in a studio, can I come? I'm very keen. I'm still working with Crest. It's not like I'm choosing to do. I was just very keen to expose myself to that world." He said, "Yaar, ek baat sun. तूने जो एफएक्स किया ना वो सही था, सब लोग को बहुत पसंद है, तू आ जा, तू एफएक्स में आ जा आनंद स्टूडियो में. आनंद स्टूडियोज वाज इन बैंड्रा, पाली हिल. एंड ही सेड यार लेकिन एक काम कर, वो तो बाद में तू आ, कल म्यूजिक सेशन है. If I remember correctly, Lakshmi ji and Pyare ji were the music directors of that film. And he said, Mehboob Studio. And I smiled. Because you can't enter Mehboob Studio unless, you know, the watchman at the gate will say, bhai, tu kidhar ja raha hai? Ruk ja, chal baar. So that was like my gate pass. And so I remember standing at the railing of Mehboob Studio like I had arrived in life that day, because I was like, oh man, the recording studio is here. And that's why I could hear. And so there was like these, again, at I don't know what age I was, whether 21, 22, I can't remember. But Tagore Da, who was in the recording studio, I got introduced very lovingly to Tagore Da. Now, you also must know that back in the day, in the 90s, you dare not sit next to the mixing engineer. You dare not. You are like the 50th assistant. You are nobody. Don't come close. You know, I can't use bad words, so I won't. But you, the farthest from get out of my face types. And here I got sat right next to Tagore Da. Very, very sweet Bengali engineer, very senior. Yeah. At the point when I'm meeting him, he's already very senior and working on equipment that's really something that shocks me because it's age old. I'm already touching. I remember I was working on a Mackie mixer, which was ahead of its time at that time, any which way. I had an 8-track recorder, and they were working with a 4-track recorder, magnetic, and the way they were working. And so Jimpu was so sweet. He introduced me as whatever he introduced me as and said he's like this genius on digital, blah, blah, blah. And Tagore Da became like my disciple at that moment, asking me 1,000 questions. And I was answering these 1,000 questions with whatever little I knew. And so I think we struck upon a very beautiful friendship for a couple of years till he retired. And then I lost track, of course, until I met him much later on another project which I was doing, which involved Mehboob Studio. The same thing with Anand Studios when I went in, you know, I met Kuldeep sir for the first time, Kuldeep Sood. Of course, but in my nature also it is, you have to give due respect to the person opposite you. You can't stand at the console and pretend like you know it, because I didn't know it. And in my younger age, I have been extremely arrogant, because knowledge can lead to arrogance also, especially when you don't know how to handle it. Maybe I've pissed off a couple of people at a young age. I can't remember. And I apologize. At least within my own mind, I kind of can understand how it is. But I think the key is I got introduced to these stalwarts that were in the business. And the beautiful thing is I never felt intimidated by it. I felt it's better to be able to learn from them. And sometimes they were very receptive and wanted to learn from me. So it was a lovely, at least with a few of them, where the bonding was very strong. That's how it started. But Prem Grant was a film that wasn't my first film. It was my first walk into a studio where I saw the mammoth of watching 100-piece orchestra performing to a picture on screen is something I really miss in today's day. And to see the music directors conducting it and then walking into the mix studio and see the film across a really big screen. I think for somebody who'd never seen that side of the world, that was my first year.
Sadly, we lost the lead actor of the film.
Yeah.
20th of April, Chintu ji.
Yes. That's life, right? I think one of the things that's given in life is that, and since you bring it up, I think it's rather important to celebrate the people we lose.
True.
And to actually come to terms with the fact that we are born into something that hasn't a fixed shelf life. We don't know when it ends, unlike a product that says use it before, best use before, right? So constantly we are running out of time. It's not about running out of time because I want to do more, because I want to earn more money. I think I could be a really lazy person and be the best at being a lazy person. If that works for you, then that's perfectly fine, right? But if you're somebody who wants to do things, then unfortunately time's what's always running out. And so I think at some points you have to enjoy life, and at some
And
points
make
you
the
have to
best.
make the best of it, because when you run out of it, there's no way to reset, right?
So true. So true. And incidentally, I think we will just sway away from the main topic and come to your hobby and then get back to the topic. Really find it intriguing that you like to, I believe you like to go long distance bicycling, because Siddharth are also travel lovers. And my longest drive of my life I've had with Siddharth, if he remembers, Delhi to Pune way back in the 90s.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course. 98 to be precise.
98.
In a Maruti 800.
Yes, that was beautiful. What,
15-year-old 800.
what an adventure that was. What an adventure. But I think Belon likes to go long distance bicycling, right?
I think it cuts across all the three modes which I can use. One is cycling, one is biking, and one is driving. So that comes from the madness of actually wanting to see the country a little bit more. Uh, I've driven Chennai, Bombay. I've driven
Okay.
Bombay, Delhi. Bombay, Goa happens very often. Bombay, Pune is not it's not far at all. It's really very close.
Yeah.
So Pune doesn't qualify. Uh, I think what I started to miss was the outdoors, in terms of when you're working on a project, you get so absorbed with the deadline that you're not energizing your mind. The other part of it was also kind of a bucket list tick, you know. I used to be a athlete when I was in school, college, and I started to miss it because I started working at a very young age. And so the extracurricular was dying, and dying very fast. Body started to kind of get pains, and you started to feel like, oh, I'm feeling old. So it had to find a way back to rejuvenate the mind, the body. I still feel the pain. It's not like the pain's gone far away. So cycling was just about opening up. The cycles, the good road bikes were coming into the country, and so I think it was 2012 or 13 when I started, and so I became what is called a randonneer, because randonneers are cyclists who do long distance endurance rides within a certain time limit without having to kill themselves over it. But the endurance actually is
No problem. That's absolutely
No
normal.
problem. Realize yeah. Anybody
yeah,
could come anytime.
potential hazard
No, no,
basically.
no. It's
So
perfectly
I'm
fine.
gonna have to deal with my dogs for a while.
I hope most of your dogs don't are hearing this and they start going into a competition.
No, they are on the ground floor. I'm on the third floor. So
So
I've got three, like Moshe says. So if one starts, they all start.
then
It's a music opera basically.
it's competition.
Yeah. So I kind of started. I got hooked onto it for a while. I've done 200, 300, and 400 kilometer rides, and they're mostly self-sustaining rides. So as an endurance rider, you have to sustain your ride. So if something goes wrong with the bike, except like I've had an incident where my gear changer has broken and I have to abandon the ride. I have to figure out my way back on my own. There's no one going to help me because I'm 100 kilometers from the nearest location where I started. And I remember that was a 600 I was on in Goa, that too. So My gear changer broke at Karwar.
So you're all alone in this.
There are possibly 10 to 15
Okay.
participants, but they're all on their own
Okay.
time
So
clock, right?
there's no backup vehicle with
No, not
anything
at
or
all.
anything.
You're
Oh,
not
you are
allowed a
completely
backup at all.
self-sustained. Okay. Anything
Yeah.
happens.
So the
Okay.
fun part of doing this was, I think, also enduring. You kind of, maybe at that point in my life, I wanted to go through that bit of training myself to endure whatever it is, be it the pain, be it the solitude, be it the alone, not the challenge of repairing a punctured tire. That was hardly the. I think when you see, so a 400 takes 24 hours to finish. That's the time clock. So you're cycling for 400 kilometers in 24 hours. You take stops.
24
You. I slept for 2 hours that night. Uh, but you have to see it through on your own. And that ride, I remember, for the most part, normally you'll have one or two riders with you, so you're cycling together. You're not meant to ride together, but you can tag, just for company.
Yeah.
That ride, I was alone, solo, for the whole 400. That was the most fantastic ride of my entire cycling life that I had.
Wow.
So, Belon, tell me one thing. I mean, this would have also geared you up in a lot of way. This kind of an endurance thing to face the challenges you
Yeah.
would have faced working in a high pressure
Yeah.
industry like Bollywood and music. I mean, it's uh, you're not working alone. You're working with a group of people
Yes.
under so many extreme conditions,
Yes.
and so this would have kind of really helped you in that in terms of.
Which is why I said it happened at a point in time when I think I was searching for it. Uh, the so for most people who know me, know I'm short-tempered, which I'd like to define as short-tempered towards the creative intent of what we do. It's never personal, but in 2020, I'd say it's always been personal, because when you are short-tempered, you end up hurting someone, you end up saying the wrong thing, you end up meaning the wrong thing, because it's not my interpretation that counts, it's the opposite side also that counts in this bit. And many a times it's very difficult to come back and say, hey, look, I'm sorry, because by then the damage is done.
Damage has been done. Yeah.
So it's been a long journey towards also trying to calm my own self down, because as a creative person you end up being a little eccentric also, which is dangerous. Your mind's ticking like a time bomb, because the ideas, when they start flowing, they just start flowing, and then the pressures that come all around, you know
I
uh,
remember seeing glimpses of the Hulk syndrome.
yeah,
Now,
I think,
Dr. Banner.
yeah, I always describe it that way, right?
Yeah.
You have to keep the Hulk in control. And I've never I mean, for a lot of my closest film friends in the business who worked with me and sustained me over the last couple of years, I like when they actually turn around and say, man, you've changed so much now. I say, you know what, let's hope the change sustains, because it's not like I don't get upset, or it's not like I don't get angry. It's not like things don't upset me. At work, outside work, in my neighborhood, in my home, there are things. But I think most of the time when something's upsetting you, it's also on onus lies on me to retrospect and look
Analyze.
inwards as
Yeah.
to what it is. Okay. Sorry, my computer is talking to me because it says Siri knows many things. So maybe Siri will tell me a few answers later.
Okay.
My computer does this as the most opportune times. It talks to me. Yeah.
That's
So,
AI
but
fun.
yeah,
Age of AI.
yeah, but you're right, Siddharth. It's been a journey towards also wanting to be an. I mean, I'd like for Moshe and you to like me, right?
So we do. We
Never
already
going.
like you.
No, but you're never going to like me if I'm a rude,
Right.
arrogant prick,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I
Right.
think we might be good at our works, and so that was the real journey. It was a fight that I was in with myself to be able to come to terms with saying, hey, look, it's okay to be you, and it's okay to not expect everybody else to be you. So calm the heck down and just smile, look in the mirror, it's perfectly fine. The world out there is perfectly fine with or without you. So you can't change it. So there were many battles that were happening internally, be it at home, be it in the society, as you grow outwards, be it at work. So be it at not being accepted the way you are. So many things. I mean, we have to deal.
Did you face that problem? Not being accepted the way you are?
I could say yes, because this is a tough one, because then I have to confess things that I don't want to. Or maybe I could also rephrase, like I said, it's always been that little bit of a inferiority complex that I didn't come from film school. So I've got to work harder than everybody else to be better than everybody else. And so I had to just let go of that little bit and say, you know what you know, and that's enough. We're not actually in a competition to be better. And I was competing with myself. That's the problem. So it's my own perception of what I was subjecting myself to.
So,
And so as in when I recognized that bit of me, it just became so much more lighter for me to smile a little more.
so to add to that, for the younger audience who's watching, that means you would have worked very hard. I'm sure of that, and I think Moshe knows you better. So I think you must have worked very hard to get where you are also.
Hard work is something that cannot be supplemented by anything, I feel. If I'm playing very hard. I'm not playing to win. I'm playing to be satisfied that I gave my 100%. And so I always talk about hard work like the contractor who came with his guys, digging the road in the hot sun, summer heat, and he points and says, go dig over there. The fellow works with his wife right through the day, he digging, she throwing the mud, he digging. The contractor comes in the evening and says, Are ghada, udhar nahi, udhar bola tha. So hard work can be defined as many different things. So I work hard, but I don't work hard at all. It's how I focus and apply myself, and that hard work equals to the experience that you kind of garner over the years. But yes, at the same time, not to take away from the fact that I work hard even now. So my days are normally 12 hours long. If I step into doing something apart from cycling, I paint. So I paint the house, or if I have to do
Wow.
a repair, electrical work, or I have to do something, it has to be done with. And this is again my predicament, I guess. It's internal to me, and it's not militarized. But if I set to do something, it has to be prim and proper. It has to be, maybe with due respect to all the Parsis out there, sometimes I get told, you are total baba.
Okay, I
करना है तो
understand.
वैसा ही करना, एकदम perfect. And I say, no, it's not perfect. Actually, I just want it to be done nicely. So I'll give my 100% to that moment and do it nicely. Otherwise, if I don't feel like doing it, I won't do it for 6 months. I'll do it on that day. After 6 months, the moment will arise, and so I procrastinate also. It's not like I'm perfect. I don't think I aspire to be perfect.
No, that's so. If I may on this ask you, Bilon, being fast versus focused
Yes.
in delivering a project. Now we're talking about specifically a project. So how would you?
A project comes on the table in this era, at least in this time of films, whether it is a film that goes to a theater or a film that goes onto an OTT platform, it all comes with its predefined schedules. The schedules are never open ended, because by the time it's reached my table, we are already late by 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, if not lesser or more than that. Everybody faces this problem, so it's not uniquely my problem. There is no concept of a schedule. Why? Because there's always someone in the chain to say, अरे लेकिन लास्ट टाइम तो तूने कर लिया था ना, क्यों रो रहा है? So then you choose why to waste energy crying about something, and you create a battle plan as to how you execute. You've got 400 kilometers to do in 24 hours. How do you execute this? And so you start to make a plan and delegate. That comes from just basic logistical planning. You have to, at least I have to have a schedule. So my teams are well placed. As a designer, I'll have a dialogue team, an effects team, a Foley team. All of these are working towards preparing my vision in terms of material that has to go to the mixing. The team can never be confused. So I can be confused, but I can be confused only when I'm in my bathroom, to put it lightly. I can't be confused when I'm sitting in a room with them. I need to be able to get to that room to be able to have a very clear vision on where we are headed and how to explain where I'm headed. Similarly, with my director, there are times when I'm working with very, very, very demanding directors who are very specific. So I have to understand their briefs. I similarly work with directors who say, हाँ तू कर ले हम लिख देंगे. I don't know what I want. In a sense, I don't know how to judge. What do I do? How do I judge? I don't know. So I have to deal with them differently, and with a very, very experienced director who's very clinical about sound, very differently. With both of these, I can never bring pressure down to my team. And so I think the key lies in planning. You have 24 hours to do 400. How do you plan it, right? I have to plan. I can't go to the starting mark and just start writing. No, that's not happening. There's maybe a day or 2 days, or maybe I have thought about this for a week, and I'm actually thought about it for that much amount of time to plan where I do and what I do and where I stop. And so I bring this to the work. So I think it's no different. You have to have a clear plan on where you're headed, how you execute, because each thing has milestones. And so to be able to reach those milestones, you have to work it backwards. So the idea then next is to work it backwards. If I need to be at mix on this date, so that mix can finish on, say, let's date X, and mix has to finish on day Y. You need to buffer everybody, because again, I no longer work all night. I've passed that point. I think 8 hours or 10 hours are productive enough to do that much amount of work. You can't do more than that. Anything beyond that is counterproductive. There's the one odd day where we do work a little late because things have gone wrong, something has not arrived. Yes, those are the few exceptions that you make. But the last few years historically have proven that I like to start mixing by around 8 9 in the morning if my engineer is okay with it. Or normally we start at 10. By 6 we're done. Director comes in, he looks at the reel, we make changes. I think by between 6 to 8 is when we are home, and everybody is happy. We're not cutting any edges. And I think that's for everyone who says no, the industry is not organized. We are pretty organized when we want to be, because it all depends on who's steering the boat. And so luckily age is on my side now, the other half of it, where people who work with me will in a whispered hush tone say, सर तो 6 बजे निकल जाएगा, हाँ चलो जल्दी करो. So I have that work to my benefit also.
When you say age is on your side, means you can still get into the car boots when you need to as high.
Well, the car boot is something I swear I don't know how that picture leaked out. You're referring to Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Yeah, where you were mixing in the boot, and they incredible when I saw that they actually closed the boot for initially I thought that the boot will be open and you will be mixing, and I mean, we are into we work with a lot of the rental guys and stuff, and I know that, I mean, okay, there are huge kinds of challenges, a lot of the sound engineers in that, but in your case, it's at least in case of a sound engineer, the venue is fixed. You don't have a venue here. It's like a venue is and the variables. I mean, anyway, in live sound, the variables are crazy. But in your case, though, it's like the variable could be just anything. So
I think the funny part, I'm glad actually, the funny part of this conversation, before I get to the funny, I don't know how that picture leaked out, because there was a picture I never wanted to make its way to the web, and it's on the damn web now, me sitting in the back of that car boot, because it's dangerous. Production did not want me to do it, so it wasn't production's call that they didn't say yes. The local Spanish production didn't say yes. They all said no because health and security is of paramount importance when you're
Yeah.
shooting overseas.
Right.
uh, we started off shooting the car scene actually with me in a follow vehicle, and I felt unsafe because I didn't have maybe I couldn't express myself with the production at that point because there wasn't time, but I felt unsafe. It's the scene where actually the three boys are driving towards Grazulema. They're going to meet Imran's father, Salman,
Okay. Okay.
and he's reading the map, and that's the scene. And so we are in this follow vehicle, and it's very narrow roads. Yeah, I felt very unsafe. I felt that was I was focusing more on my driver than I was focusing on my work, because I need to also stay in proximity to the principal car, and the chances of losing my wireless frequency was very high. I don't remember now whether I discussed this with anyone, my India line producer or my EP. I can't remember now. It's too far back to recollect. But I would have possibly discussed it either with my line producer or my EP. And I remember rigging the gear in the back of the car, and my local producer from Spain, Anna Casina, she came up and said, "No, no, no, you can't do this." And I empathize. I mean, I put her in the spot, literally, because, and I say this to all my fellow recorders, and even if this picture is seen by uh, some of my peers in the US or London or anywhere else in the world, they would diss me for it because it's very unsafe what I did. I still have pains, my shoulders still hurt.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming from those years or not, I don't know. Now, the car was not that bad, yeah. Now, to tell you how the Buick is, it's a really huge car. And it had a tube well. You know, your spare tire well is normally horizontal. This had a vertical tube well. So I could sit in there and operate. My actors were always very, very, very conscious of me being in the booth. All the three of them, Farhan, Ritik, and Abhay. We were always on walkie communication, and I was only locked in for a minute and a half to three, maybe four, because of turnarounds. It wasn't something that was excruciatingly painful. I wanted proximity to the actor. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be where the action was. I didn't want to be separated. And there are scenes where the car is on a low loader, or A-line low loader, what we use for the film. On those scenes, I'm on the low loader, so I have not gone into the car. So obviously, you're not doing something that's stupid when it's not required to be done. But yeah, I think my career has taken me through cars, planes, the plane where he jumps from. That was the only one
Right.
time I've recorded in a plane up there, hiding in one corner again.
Ship.
Bikes,
Ship.
and ships.
Cruise
Yeah,
liner. Sorry.
a cruise
Dil
line,
Dhadakne Do.
but there's been cruise liners, and there's been dinghies, and there's been boats. So I've done a lot of that kind of water-based transport vehicles. So I guess the experience that's come from that is a lot, because it's like just ticking off the list. I've done this. I've done this. The cruise liner was another story altogether. It is an impossible task to start with. If you asked me, when I look back, uh, challenges that were unheard of, you couldn't have calculated for them. But when I look back, and a few weeks back, actually, we did a session amongst friends, some of my filmmaker friends, who wanted to talk about the complete unraveling of Dil Dhadakne Do. And wow, when we actually did a dissection of it, I think it's always been my best work as a production mixer. I mean, there are a lot of other films that I feel are also my best work, but this one uh, rises far above in terms of the angle of difficulties in recording that film. And I eventually, even editing that film, when you came to the dialogue edit, it's one of my favorite film that I've ever done. Today is actually the 5 years of release of that film. So it's
Today.
exactly, yeah, at
Oh.
fourth, yeah. So
Okay.
been one of my most personal favorites in terms of the, it's when you have 10 children, you can't choose one from the other.
True. True.
But this is since all the other children aren't around, this is my favorite.
And all of your children have been quite exceptional children, I must say.
Yeah, thank
but-
God for that.
Yeah. But do share, since it's also the fifth year, and it's an incredible movie, and that song, I mean, the music from it is also incredible. Do share some of the.
And Amir Khan playing a dog.
Yeah.
So do share some of the, like you said, it was one of the most challenging. Please share some of the challenges, which you faced. And
The ship is a cruise liner, which equals to people on holiday. On a cruise liner, there are roughly around 2,500 passengers on holiday. There's 750 odd crews servicing those passengers. Uh, this is a mid-segment cruise liner, but having said that, you can't disturb somebody's holiday when you're shooting. So you can't go up to someone and say, "Hey, bhai, thoda awaaz band karo." It's a potential legal lawsuit against the shipping company.
so the crews were on regularly while the shooting was happening and everything.
Yeah, it would cost a few.
Right.
Not,
Okay.
I don't know whether it would be a few $1 million, but it would be a substantial amount of millions of dollars to hire the
Hire the
entire cruise, because what most people have never been able to put together unless you've been on a cruise. And I'd never been on a cruise until then. I'd only seen pictures, right? It's a 13-story building that's a mile long.
Yeah,
That's
right.
sailing.
Right.
That has, I don't know how many rooms. I don't even remember how many rooms there were. I know, and I remember seeing a board somewhere in the crew deck which had the list of passengers and crew, because every week a new set of passengers would come on board. So we did this 7-day sea cruise in the Mediterranean in a loop for 6 weeks, and every week a new set of 2,500 would come on. And so I know there was an average of 2,500 passengers apart from the 120 that was us. Yeah. We had sections locked off, designated for us to shoot. We had. So at those points, it would be cordoned off. It would be planned on a day, let's say when we are at dock and the passengers have gone sightseeing. And so we do these scenes here. But like the days when you do a scene at the pool, if somebody wants to come to the pool, you can't tell them you can't come.
Oh.
So we can just go around saying, por favor, silencio, por favor, silencio,
Okay.
silence, please try. But you can't do more than that. There were some who were, typical Indian per se. Sorry, no offense meant to the Indian community,
right,
but a little of those equivalent, you get that one person who wants to be a nuisance value. So you just let it be. But I don't think we faced the problem. Most of the problems were with what was happening, the challenges. So these problems aren't problems created for a shoot. The challenges, whether you're shooting, let's say, on the topmost deck, which is exposed to all the elements, especially wind, and you're sailing at 18 to 20 knots, and the winds, depending on which direction the wind's hitting you, how do you record sound in those moments? So when you write down, the song that you mentioned actually is Gala Gudia, the one song.
Yeah.
That's happening, actually, that's the crew area where the crew hangs out, which is deck 3, if I remember correctly, which is just above the engine rooms, because that's where your propellers, and they are really massive. Yeah. So good. That noise, it's vibrating. Yeah. So strangely, we've shot in places like that. The funny things are, like, you're shooting, after Gala Gudia gets over and all the family is sitting up there and they're chatting post the song, and then there's that interaction between Farhan and Rahul Bose's character ki women should stay at home. So you're sitting there in the middle of the night, there's nobody around, but that's the cappuccino machine, the used coffee machine that's there, and there are those small espresso cups. clink, 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 because it's vibrating.
Right.
And so you're searching for rubber pads and mats to
Put on top.
move hundreds of cups and try and get that sound. So yeah, there are very funny stories. There's stories of when we were shooting where Anushka's doing her rehearsals, right? There's one scene or two scenes in that place, and where she's rehearsing, that's the auditorium, that's where the entertainment happens, right? They have shows put on, song and dance and blah 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 blah, and there are 40 to 60 lights. And you know, when you put these lights up, they all have those fans whirring because you can switch them off from the remote, but you never switch them off from the power. So I had to take a ladder and go and switch them all off, because I thought to myself, if I ask somebody else to switch it off, and if he hasn't kept a count of how many lights are gone off, when the show actually starts, and if one light doesn't go off, they'll curse us. So yeah, there are many anecdotes on the ship. There are many off the ship, like when we were doing the boat chases. So the boat chase, actually, here, since we talked about the car scene, you know, and the decision I took, why I took it, the boat chase, when they are in the climax of the film, in that orange dinghies, and they're chasing, and the Coast Guard is chasing after them, most of it is all sync. And I had a fantastic guy helming my dinghy, because I was in one of the dinghies, principal vehicle. Most of that scene is shot. Oops, my dog's at it again. Most of that scene is shot with a drone camera. Okay. Tak Baldwin, I have to name him, because I think he's one of the most splendid stunt guys I've worked with. He was helming the boat. I'm sitting at the top end of the boat, big plastic sheet over me, and ready to capsize and turn over if we have to. My brief to him was, Tak, stay as close as you can, we're in signal range. And he did that to the T. He's actually he's a very renowned stuntsman from London. We regularly chat sometimes, pleasantries, but you know, that's when you feel very confident that no, whatever has to happen will happen, but the guy helming my gig is really good. So my life's in his hands, and I just focus on my work. And I think we pulled off that scene. The film has a very special scene. I always bring this up when I talk about the film, is the one in the hammam, when the mother and daughter go to Priyanka and Shefalia in the hammam. And that's a very, very old historical hammam in Istanbul. The problem with recording in a hammam is that it's very hot, right? Because it's a functional hammam, and it's heated to around 50 degrees. The moment you go in and you come out, there's a huge variance in temperature also, because Istanbul at that point was cold. It was around 16 to 18 degrees. So the variance is a good 30 degrees in between. So when you take gear in to a hot room and bring it out into a cold room, condensation. So we were very worried about that bit. So that whole scene actually is my most special scene of my life. I think I'd die saying that, because though it's a very easy scene, technically it was very challenging. And how we pulled it off, and only with 2 lapels, because I couldn't get a boom in there. We chose not to use a boom on that scene. So that film has a lot of, as we break it down, has a lot of small snippets that make it very special to me, because one had to plan and plan. I think the way I'd summarize this is, I'm always happy to have done a film that had a challenge, because I knew that when I had done Game and Zindagi, or Rock On before that, or Kai Po Che after that, I always wanted to be challenged with something a little more challenging, because otherwise it seems like going to work wasn't any fun. So I have to thank my filmmakers for that.
So that's part of your adventure, where you got your Xander Cage moments, where you got to do completely different things and at different venues. And
I have to thank my filmmakers for that, because you know, a filmmaker dares to dream. Now, how do you pull it off? And it doesn't have to be a superhero film. It could be something as simple as a drama, as Dil Ratne Do. So I think I have to always go back and thank each of these filmmakers for having dreamt so big. And then having said, okay, now it's your baby, you take it from here.
So was this I mean, considering that the size of the ship, the cruise line and everything, did you have a huge crew with you for the?
We had a 3-member crew. That's all we could have, including myself. Yeah.
Three-member
So 2 boom
including
operators
you.
and yeah, including me. So that means my two main boom operators and me. One of the key reasons is because it's again a floating hotel. You have only that many rooms available to you. You don't have more. So how do you have a larger crew? So that was the
Okay.
limitation. So it wasn't because we couldn't have more people. It's just that the premise was limited to start with. So there was no more rooms. And
Oh, so okay.
but I think
But
this is across the board. Whenever you ask for another, now this particular project aside, whenever you ask for another crew member because of certain reasons, they always want to cut it down. And this is a debate that we always have. Why don't you cut the actor's entourage down?
true.
Why don't you
Right,
cut
rather than
hair,
taking
makeup? Why don't you cut
yeah.
one person from lighting? Find a department to cut it down from. We are
For some
already a department that's working with limited resources,
yeah.
but maybe it's a losing battle also, because
Yeah.
I've tired myself out trying to justify
No,
why.
I agree with you because in a venue also, when we go to do sound, I mean, let's install anything, the first thing to be cut is the audio. I mean, they will spend on interiors, huge amount of money will be spent, and then it comes to audio, where then the budget nahi hai. And I wonder that, okay, huge place, if you can make Taj Mahal in it, but if you seat people and you can't get the sound across, what's the point? But somehow it's a
I don't know what's the, for many things I have a good explanation as to how to look at things. I don't know here what the explanation can possibly be that would get someone to see reason, because
I'll tell you. Sorry to cut you, Bilon. I feel it's something because sound can't be heard. Sorry, can't be seen. It can only be heard. You know,
oh
we are more
yeah,
used
yeah,
to anything visual.
yeah,
Is it's a tangible thing, because sound
yeah,
is kind of
yeah,
not tangible, and we are only used. We are applying one sense to it,
yeah.
and it's something heard, and it's a it's difficult to quantify it. Hence, I feel it's difficult for people to you know
You've said it very rightly, because it brings me to another story I normally try to express to people when I shoot. I say, all of you are looking at the monitor, looking at something when a shot's going on. How many of
correct.
you are hearing stuff? Because one of the things that I started to notice after 2015, and I think 2016 was the last film I shot on location, because I got completely disillusioned with wanting to achieve excellence in sound given the way things were heading. Phones ringing on set, people on, constantly walking, talking, something or the other happening. It's like if you were a makeup person and you were doing a touch up and I come in between to mic. There's a certain protocol and a certain way you conduct yourself on set to give another person the room to do their work. If
Their
I'm,
space.
yeah, there's space. If actors in costume, I don't go and jump in and say, I want to put my mic now. I wait for the time to be told, now's your time, go and do this. So when a shot's called to silence, to roll for action, and we are at speed for sound, is the time when my job really starts. Until then, I haven't started working, just like the actor hasn't started working, just like the DOP hadn't. The DOP actually has been working because they are lighting and doing so many things.
Yeah.
But the actor, the director, and me are, and the DOP are working at this point. This is where our shot's really manifesting into something that will make its way to the big screen. And then to have somebody ambling across, drop something, somebody's phone ring, it's takes very little intelligence of any form to be able to understand that 100 people on set need to maintain some silence. So this nature of respect, as we call it, to the art of recording locations sound existed when 2000, when Dil Chahta Hai and Lagan and all those films stemming forward, because suddenly we rediscovered Sing sound, as we call it. But as it came along, softwares and technologies got better, and then we were dealing with people saying, "Arey, to post mein kar lena
Post
yaar."
mein kar lena. So
I don't, yeah, I don't seem to. So for that person watching the monitor, I say, you know what? Only three people are listening to sound at this point. One listening to it clinically with a microscope view on it. One is my director who's really not focused on the sound because he or she is looking at the performance. That's the job. And the third is my script supervisor or continuity, who might or might not be listening to the articulateness of what I'm hearing.
right.
So the 99 are not listening to sound. So
They're not.
it is right what you're saying, that the senses are very different, and this the split between, the divide between is very huge. And so those are the few heartaches I carry home when I come back as a location recordist. As a sound designer, I don't have to worry about that because I'm stuck in a closed room.
Correct.
I'm buffered from these problems, and I don't have those 99 people entering my room. So I'm very buffered to focus and
Yes.
stay focused on my work.
But on location. But so tell me one more thing. I mean, would now with technology, as you said, has gone to a different level, and that's why everyone expects things can be done in post. Would you say skill, the skill set which was needed previously versus which is needed now, and is that also changed or is
Changed.
that missing?
It's a myth to think it's changed. Many think it's much faster. For those who think it's faster, I feel that's because you don't know the art. It is faster. I can select a software, select a track, apply it, it's done. But the art is not there in that.
Right.
And
So
so
the art is gone now because of technology.
the way I always interpret this is when I watch a program on my television, uh, off my big screen, and I'm hearing stuff the way I want to hear it. And I don't know how it's been crafted, right? And I enjoy it because I don't know the flaws in the back end on the session. But when I started looking at the session, I realized, oh shit, I wish you had done this like this. It would been a little bit better and little bit better and little bit better. So better is only like one who's a connoisseur, who appreciates and knows. And it you need to fall into that category, which is not perfection. It's about knowing the art, and both work. It's an ecosystem where both of these work well. It would take something to separate one from the other. And so the true one who appreciates good art will be able to immediately recognize one from the other. Like if I'm watching a film, I started watching something the other day, and I had to abandon it because I found it wasn't. I remember saying this. I said the premise is good, but the execution is terrible. So, okay, I got it, but I need to stop now. And I'm very rarely disrespectful to watching a film because I'd like to see it if I started, but I couldn't. So I think for each person who appreciates something in a package like this, they'd be able to then suck out differentiations between. Not everybody can. So I think that's fair also, because everybody can't be perfect, right? And it takes that much amount. I mean, I wasn't of this cut when 20 years ago. It took, I mean, I had 20 years to refine it.
Right. Reach where you are.
Man, it's taken, that means I'm really slow.
No.
It could also mean that he took
No.
20 years to figure it out. He's useless. But which is why I say, look, it's fair. There are different kinds of projects, different kinds of films. But yes, touching upon just again what you said, the know-how is all there. The alphabet has always been there. Why does it take for only that one writer to win the Booker?
Right.
Whatever may be the Oscar of writing.
Right. The Pulitzer or book. Yeah, whichever.
Exactly.
Right.
The alphabet has always been there. The
Correct,
words have always been there.
Correct. How
Now,
you apply it.
how do you put them together? How do you mold them together? How do you create that? So yes, there's been a huge amount of advancement in the plugins, in the workstations that we are using, in the technology that's being applied. But you still also have to apply your mind to it. There's no shortcut around it.
Yes. Right. And I honestly feel that experience, there is no this thing to experience, when that is something which only, there's no shortcut to experience.
Yeah.
And no amount of technology can go around that,
Correct.
Like,
The
and
technology is like a super highway that's built for you to get from one point to the other. Now when you start off on that journey to get from one point to the other, if you drive recklessly, you're going to end up in a
yeah,
reckless situation,
right.
or whatever. I mean, you interpret it. I like to cross convert it into something that can actually translate to a piece of information that anybody can understand. He does not have to be only working on sound. Experience is something that you burn your fingers with.
True, true.
The nastier the burn, the better it is. The more you learn. If you burn yourself for the same thing twice, that's not acceptable. But yes, I think that's what makes us faster. Faster doesn't mean quicker because we are over smart. Faster means it's got a due amount of focus. So like I said, when you start a project and you're getting into post and you have this tight timeline, you're working on a timeline that has to be finished on the deadline date. Same thing when you're getting into the actual work. The only way you can execute it is when you have very clear focus. So for me as a designer, I need to have that focus as to what I want to achieve. Ideas will keep changing, ideas will keep evolving. Sometimes a good idea can end up becoming a really terrible idea never used, and it implements in a different manner. But that's again the craft. You have to allow those creative juices to flow, and some days it just doesn't flow. It's just not there. The idea just not there. I got asked just a few days back on a trailer I did because we changed something and it became something else, and it was just with sound. And so the person at the other end, friend of mine watching it, said, "But how did you get the idea?" I said, "I don't know. I genuinely, I know." She said, "How do you get these ideas? How do they come to you?" I said, "I don't know. I just don't know how they come. It just comes. It comes from being inspired by watching what's come to me. It comes, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that." So I think for that, my answer is you got to be childlike. You have to be childlike. You can't be an adult in this. You have to be inquisitive because children are so inquisitive.
Yes, they're open to new ideas much more than, because the conditioning
Yeah.
is much lesser.
Yeah.
Children's,
And you have to do it in an unconscious manner. You can't say to yourself, "I'm going to be like a child."
that has to come to
It
you.
has to be that way.
Live the innocence. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the clue.
Actually, with you, I think we can go on talking, and because you have so much, and honestly, the more I talk to you, the more questions which come. And one thing I really want to know, and I think a lot of our viewers and people would want to know that, see, with OTT, something we're seeing, the movie platform has changed drastically. From the CDs to from the VCDs to DVDs to having a DVD to Blu-rays. The other day I saw Blu-rays lying on my thing, and now it's like, you have the amount of option you have. Okay, so of course there's a lot of old content which is on that, but at the same time, now new content is coming up, and obviously filmmakers always obviously seeing that this is going to be the new,
Yeah.
platform by which, I mean, how trends change. Like movie theaters were popular, they went down, the multiplex culture came about. But I think, with the changing scenario and the way things are now, also convenience is going to play a big role.
Yes.
Paying a yearly subscription and getting access to so much, and sitting in your own house, set up a good home theater. And if you compare the cost vis-a-vis now, I mean, the last 2 months I have done it, when the family goes out,
Yeah.
it's not just the cost of the movie, the theaters also make so much money on popcorn and stuff. And it's, you think about these things. So in terms of that change, and in terms of, I mean, is audio changed with regard to, or are there any changes with that in mind which are happening?
Well, it's fantastic that you're able to access a lot of this content over a platform, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, whichever platforms that are, and of course a lot of the other ones which I don't know about because I don't watch. So I've never watched much of television over the last few years because it kind of called the idiot box, right? It became very idiotic to my sensibilities at least. uh, it's lovely to know that you can actually be in a home, like I'm sitting at home in a 5.1 width, something I always dreamt about doing. I remember telling Clifford at Genelec, I have Genelecs in my studio, but one day it'll be at home too. And now I've got a 5.1 Genelec at home. So it's a luxury to be able to sit and watch a film in the environment like this. It's a luxury that will be when you're able to watch a film with Dolby Atmos in your home. It's a luxury to also be able to even watch a film with two speakers in your home. So the quality of the content that's actually making its way, either old or new, to an OTT platform is all good. And I'm talking across the board. So access to information, this has been one more of those outlets for access to, for me, access to watching a lot of films in other languages, not just a film that has to have been nominated at the Oscars or won something at Cannes, so on and so forth. I can randomly choose even a series today, and the algorithm leads one to the other. So it's exciting times. What does it do for a theater is a question that needs to be seen, especially after the outcome from these last few weeks because of COVID. Like we said at the beginning when we started, COVID's not gone.
No.
It's unfortunately not gone. So as a individual, it's question that's, I don't think it's worrying me. I don't know what's the nature of this question I have in terms of how do I come to terms with getting out of my home. The virus doesn't worry me as much as I don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't know how to deal with it. I'm not equipped to understand and interpret how to deal with it. And how do these changes actually affect now from me as a singular entity going outwards? We don't know. How does it affect a business like a theater, like a restaurant? I mean, anything that requires an assembly of people in there, it's going to be a very big question. Historically, I think as we go into the future, this era will be given some name for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's going to be.
Now, does home viewing supplement a theater experience? No, I don't think that ever will happen. As much as I wishfully would want to be on the other side of the world, because I hardly ever go to a theater. One reason being because theaters are so badly calibrated. That's my personal grievance. But there are times when if I want to watch a Transformers or a Tron or Avengers, Gravity or Dunkirk, I have to watch it in a theater, maybe if it's possible on an IMAX screen, because that's the real theater experience.
True.
And so hence for certain films, no, you have to, I think, head into a theater space to watch it. I guess our discussion is, how does this current scenario affect the long term? What's the impact it has on?
That and also how is it, because now more and more movies might be made for a OTT platform.
Right.
Would there be a difference in terms, because I'm seeing a lot of movies which are coming out which probably might, I don't even know if they were released or not, or for that matter the series which are coming out.
Yeah.
And some of them are very good, even in Hindi.
Yeah.
The ones which are coming out recently, I finished, I think I can take names, right, Moshe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Patal Lok I saw, which I feel some of the Hindi ones are coming out are incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
Patal Lok was very nice. Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. Another one that was out on Amazon a few months back, The Family Man, was very nice.
Family Man, yeah. Family Man or Sacred.
See, the good thing is, sorry, Siddharth. The good thing is with the OTT platforms, till the censorship stems its way into it. The good thing is that filmmakers are getting a chance to get a platform to release material that earlier was difficult to release. One of the outcomes of the virus, I believe, has been that films that were meant to end up in a theater are releasing on the OTT
On the
platform.
OTT. Hmm.
Now that we have to empathize with, it's pure business, and
True.
I'm not off the bill talk about a producer's job because I don't understand it entirely, and it's a lot of money that's at stake because you've worked on something it was meant to finish in a year is now being delayed because of whatever reason. There's no platform and it's sitting ready, right? So there's a lot of money that gets stuck because of these things. So one has to take a hard decision to say, look, what's the way out and what's the way forward. I am in the midst of three projects myself, which are stuck midway because neither this way or that way, because we're waiting on things that require an assembly of a group of people to collaborate to get it done, and it's not happening.
Hmm.
So we have to also empathize with the fact that what's the way, what's the decisions that producers take, you know. And then because of these decisions it might lead to a change in the long term. These current decisions of releasing on an OTT can stem from the fact that, look, it's ready, we have to get it, you know, even if we are losing 10 crores, chuck it, let it go. Again, I'm speculating because, like I said, it's not my business to talk about
Right.
this part of the business. But I'll talk about sound, for example.
Sound. So do you
let's
think
let's
that?
let's
Sorry. Yeah.
let's give you an example. Like, let's say I start shooting and one of the things I'm seeing people talk about is, no, don't use lapels, only boom. Cut
Okay.
down the crew to cut, because lapels have to be sanitized and XYZ.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Okay.
want to
Right.
go into that.
Right. Okay.
I
Okay.
don't want to foray into that
Mhm.
discussion, only because they should ask people across the board, people
Correct.
like me and some of
Correct.
my
Absolutely.
peers and some of my colleagues. We should have been a collective decision rather than five people sitting in a room saying this is what we should be doing, because they
Yeah.
clearly don't
Absolutely.
know, they clearly don't know all sides of the 360 in that 3D view, is my opinion. But what happens when we decide to say, okay, fine, agreed, we'll only shoot with the boom, and then once all of this gets through, you know, it's going to be that post में तो कर लेगा ना, अरे यार तूने तो वो
Hmm.
प्रोजेक्ट बूम से किया था ना, अब क्यों,
Hmm.
why you अरे
That's
what.
a
So
right.
there's no uh, there have been films that have been shot exclusively at only a boom, and I say, look, if that rocks your boat, please do it. But
Hmm.
we don't know the long-term impacts of
Hmm.
decisions today that will affect tomorrow,
True.
you know. So we are definitely dealing, like I have certain points to raise when it comes to sound in this point, in this time. I'm sure producers have their own things that they have talked about which lead to certain decisions. We have to now play it on a day-to-day basis and see what would be
True.
the long-term impact.
True. Hmm.
True. So I have a question,
Yes.
a very important question from a lot of aspiring people.
Yes.
Siddharth, I'll just take Velon through this question and
Please go ahead. Hmm.
have something. Um, like you said, you didn't have a movie or film background and no direct connections, and I think you ended up being the first. You did the first Indian Hindi movie to be mixed on DTS.
No,
Yugpurut.
no, 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 no,
I
no,
mean, one of
no,
the
no,
early ones.
no, no.
So
The first ever Indian film to be mixed in DTS was a film called Indian that was done by H. Sridhar, in
okay,
media artist.
okay. So, but without any background, uh, you have come up this long curve. And since I have a hobby of collecting movie posters, my grandmother had the same hobby. So I see, and since you're my friend, and I feel very proud to see, you know, Kai Po Che in INOX when I go to watch a movie, and Belon Fonseca, you know, in big, and for Shootout at Lokhandwala or any of these movies. I mean, a sound designer's name mentioned in big. So this journey that you just told us about, there's so many aspiring sound engineers, youngsters who would like some advice from you about education, because you are also an educator. What would you suggest them to do in terms of upskilling themselves?
Whatever it is you want to do, you have to start doing it. and there's no time to start. You started the moment you thought about it, you started, and then when you did it, you haven't finished it, so there's no end to it. Question is, where do you want to go with it? I think I always had a start, and I always had a goal, uh, and each goal had a milestone. It didn't matter if I made it or didn't make it. I needed to be able to get there. So yes, most of our dreams start with wanting to do a film. When you do a film, it moves on to winning an award. When you win an award, you want to win two more. When you win two more, you want to win 10 more. It's also coupled with the money that you want to make. My advice is actually, advice is better when you get paid for it. You know,
Getting
when
paid
it's
for your passion.
no. This is the first time I'm ever going to say this anywhere. I feel when you give advice for free, no one really takes it seriously because they just listen to it and they move on to the next thing. At some point, uh, there's a syndrome I kind of tap into from Ayan Mukherjee's film called the Wake Up Sid syndrome. There's a point in your life, either you're really young and you're lucky and you discover it. This is what I want to do. What's the outcome of what you want to do? You don't know because you don't know the journey. You could be 35 and discovered it. You could have gone to the US. I have friends, many of us have friends of those kinds who've gone to the US and decided to chuck away everything they're doing and come back and do something completely different. Well, that's the wake up Sid moment, and then they excel at it and they found their calling. So we talk of it when you want to become a priest, right? How do you find that calling? And then you go to the seminary and you study, and then before you finally take that plunge, you have to search your insides too. It's a voice that tells you, but the problem with this voice is it told you, but the voice doesn't act on it. It's you who have to act on it. And so
So true. Yeah.
the funny part of the journey is I heard the voice most likely, okay, and I'm not cuckoo, so for sure. uh, and then you start doing stuff, and then you start doing stuff, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and then I think there are those milestones where you discover things along the way, and you, like I have to say, I discovered an the actual root of an equalizer very late in life, because you're using an EQ, but how is it being used? And I'm saying this from a point of view because you asked me earlier about the technology, the tools, the craft. And I tell a lot of people when I work on dialogue edit, I don't get any of the tools into play until I'm done with my edit. It's the last thing that comes in. Because many a times I get asked, but the dialogue track is so clean. I'm like, I haven't cleaned it at all. It's all in the edit. It's all in how I'm cutting it. And it's very simple, basic EQ. Very little of it coming in and out only where I require it. You know? So you discover these few things along the way, and each time you discover something, you're discovering something new, and you're discovering something new. And so that's the advice. Just wanting to be is not enough. You have to act on it in a in a very sublime manner. It's not like you wake up every day and you're driving yourself insane ki, no, I want to be the best, no, I want to be the best. No, you'll kill yourself. I think it has to turn into something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And so you do things because you love to do it. And let me tell you this, there are days when you will cry yourself to sleep because it's very difficult to try and achieve that, because it's just not sounding right. And it's not like I'm killing myself over creating a soundtrack that sounds perfect. No, it's not possible to have the perfect soundtrack because you don't know what a perfect soundtrack is till it's all done and it stitches together. But you have to move from waking up to wanting to do what you want to do, because I call it the dream. Okay, so I had a dream. I wanted to be somebody who achieved something from this little small place in Bandra where I grew up. Being a Catholic, I wanted to be a Catholic who was known to have risen to something. And I always say I'm a Catholic who work really hard. Now, it's not about religion over here. It's about a human being who says, look, I've achieved what I did because I worked hard. I was passionate about what I did. And there were days when I just procrastinated and didn't do anything. I was lazy as lazy could be because I was not motivated enough. So in your passion, you also have to find the motivation, because many a times I'm sitting at this very desk and working in my home. And if I'm not passionate about what I'm doing, if I don't love what I'm doing, I won't like to do it. I'll pass it on to somebody else and I wouldn't care less about how it sounded, right? So when you see that name on the poster, what's lovely, and this is a director called Apurva Lakia who told me this way back in 2005. He said in the most explicit manner, you'll be long dead and gone, but the world will remember you by the name that they see over there. Don't, and he said, don't fuck it up. So 2005,
Well
Ek
said.
Ajnabi, Apurva Lakia, Bunty Walia, Jassi Walia. It was what I call my comeback to the business. It was post SAE. I chosen to quit and go back to the waters that I felt I truly belonged in, which was sound designing. And so in 2005, I again found a calling in life, because I had completely quit the business. I never wanted to go back to film when I quit in 2003. So it's you'll get a call many times in life, and you just have to be childlike. You just have to be open. You just have to, and it's not like I've been open all my life. I've gone through very dark patches. I've gone through very depressive patches. It's not exciting doing what I'm doing on my own. It can the this nature of work can make you very depressive also. So you have to work. I feel when you're completely down, it's really good to know you're down, because you have no other place but to go up from there, right? It's like a catapult to come all the way back up. So yes, you want to be great. Start. The journey has started the moment you thought of it, and it will end only when you're dead, or it will end when you decide it ends and you choose to possibly become a farmer. And then when you become a farmer, the journey started again, and you have to be, and you can't stop till you. So if you want to go out and drink with friends, then you go out and drink with friends. Don't look at your phone, because you're out with your friends. I want to be with you at this moment. Last 1.5 2 hours almost that we are chatting.
Almost, yes.
Yeah, we are engaged with each other. We are not really concerned about what's happening. At least I'm not concerned, and I'm sure you aren't, about what's happening in the world outside. So the advice is, be where you are at. It's not only about sound, it's about whatever you do in your life. Do it to the fullest and enjoy it to the most.
Great words. Genuinely great words.
Well, I really hope we've talked very little about sound design, and we've talked very little about mix, and we've talked more about worldly matters and personalities and kind of an exposition of life in some way. But I think to help, I'm more than happy to do part 2, 3, 4, 5.
I think
but wait, before you say that, I think that's what makes its way to my films. Many people ask me, but how do you get that idea? When an artist paints, I draw inspiration from many things. I draw inspiration from movies I see. I finally saw a film called Race, not the Indian film Race, the one about Jesse Owens. And I draw a huge amount of inspiration from people, they could be artists, they could be engineers, they could be pioneers in something. They could be people who struggle through life to, and all of these people have one thing in common. They worked really hard, they struggled. Their struggles could be against a race discrimination, it could have been towards a gender discrimination, it could have been towards an art form discrimination. But if you see one thing unique about all these people, even those who have not been recognized, they're all struggling to get somewhere because they have a dream. Even the chaiwala had a dream, right? Look where he turned out.
Absolutely.
Whether he's right or wrong is beyond our discussion right now. But I dream to be the prime minister, and the good part is you can achieve various mysterious things in life. Yeah.
I always say the similar thing what you just said, Belon. I mean, greatness has actually, it's one man with a vision and going against the odd and saying, "Okay, I want to do this." Whether it's Elon Musk with regard to SpaceX and all that, and or it's Bill Gates with regard to all the phones we're using, or Moshe, as I always take Arthur's name in this, and it's
Arthur
always
Felix.
Arthur you met, Vilon.
Yes, yes,
He's
I know.
he's
Of
also a
course.
similar guy. He's like you know, again a guy who believes in something and says कि करना है. So that belief and then acting on it. These are, I think, yeah, that's a lovely way of putting it, which you have, Vilon. And I completely think that we will definitely need to have a part two with you just on sound.
Certainly.
Yeah,
We've not had enough of you.
yeah. It's like I know we've almost touched 2 hours. Our plan was an hour, but it's almost
Didn't feel
Well,
like.
पता ही नहीं
I,
चला.
I can only hope we have enough of viewers who sustained the 2 hours.
There are many
Well,
And
who love.
so the good part which I realized about this is it's always going to be there on Facebook. So it's like
Right,
even if
yes.
somebody couldn't sustain, because now the attention span, and that is also a great thing which
Yeah.
you said. Like we have spent this 2 hours only on this, and this is also lost activity. People go to watch a movie also, they are checking their phone or talking on it. I don't understand why. I mean, we've lost that art of focusing on one thing.
Actually, when Moshe and me talked about this, we said, let's keep this down to 45 minutes because that's the attention span in a long format video.
I lately got told when I was discussing Facebook, Instagram, some very person who's into digital marketing, he said, "My boy, I don't think you are up with times. TikTok is the new thing. Attention span, as per AI and experts, is 15 seconds today.
Yeah.
That's why TikTok is so popular. 15-second video." Whether it's doing turn, 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 or whatever it is that they do, but so 45 minutes.
So the good part is because this advice was free, many of them will not get it because they've already tapped out of it. So
True. No, but they can watch it again. People would definitely, if anybody wants to, they will. I mean, like in this time, difficult time, that was the whole idea. Let us do our bit.
yeah.
Let us. The question is, people ask, we are sitting in office. I'm sitting in office. Our office is on. Are we doing any business right now? No, not really. But we're trying to, because like you said, you have to keep, if sitting at home, nothing is going to happen. Even if we are doing now this activity, and if whomever hears it and maybe they get inspired or whatever it is, I mean, we have to keep trying to do something.
Yes. That's precisely why I still engage with the field of education because one keeps trying. In my case, I always say I love being an educator because I get a chance to revise my basics. I get a chance for me to go back and, relearn what I'm practicing. And whenever I walk into a class, I always tell them the good thing of today is that I've not come prepared. Just like I told Moshe when we discussed this whole thing, I said I want to walk in unprepared because you will get the best out of me for that moment that's applicable for that space and time of what I'm feeling and thinking. And so most kids, it's anyway we've discussed this, and it's but back to the advice of look, if you're on a journey, you have to give it its due. The journey is such a master that it's waiting to see how much you'll submit to it. And sometimes the journey leaves you very disappointed, like a film, until the 17th reel, and then the 18th reel unleashes a beautiful climax upon you. And sometimes it just doesn't. It leaves you with just the experience. So, if you start to interpret life like a film, which I have the problem of doing, or in terms of anecdotes or parables, it leaves you with a very beautiful taste in your mouth to know that the journey is always going to be the journey, whatever it may be. We all three of us have a unique journey. All the viewers have a unique journey. No journey is one better than the other. It might make a great story, one better than the other, but all journeys are unique. So we should leave them on that note.
Yeah.
To experience a beautiful journey in whatever that we all want to do.
Actually, life needs to be looked upon as a film. That is what I have learned. You should actually look at life also as a film and that is going to be the spiritual part, which we haven't touched upon today, but I think we've touched upon now. Needs to be part 3 with Bilon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must share something with you, Bilon. I mean, I haven't said this ever to anybody. One of our colleagues, Nico, he met you at the Bombay thing when we had our
Palm.
event.
Yeah.
And I've never heard him to say. I mean, he's a great guy, he's a dear friend. But after talking to you, he said this guy is most incredible. I mean, he's an incredible person. He says he was in India about Moshe 5-6 days.
Yes.
I don't think I even shared this with you, Moshe.
No, but Nico called me up and took Belon's number from me.
Okay. So Nico tells me that this is the probably in this my entire India trip. I think you and he spoke for about 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. He said it was the most amazing conversation or the most. I mean, he didn't say that. I mean, I don't remember the exact words, but he said this was the most worthwhile conversation I've had in my entire India trip. I don't know what you guys spoke about.
I have no recollection either. It's a erased memory. I can't remember.
Send him. There's a picture of Belon, Nico, and another person. Maybe I don't know who it was, you or somebody.
I
in that.
remember the picture. Yes, I remember the picture. I vaguely remember how Nico looks. We are at that table. I remember that, if I'm not mistaken. But the conversation, I would not remember at all.
So
And if
maybe
we sustain the 45-minute conversation, because I can't sustain conversations normally, but if we sustain the 45-minute conversation, it must have been something interesting.
we will leave Nico to comment on that and let us know what it was when he sees this
Yes.
and
Yes.
let us know.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's genuinely been amazing chatting with you,
Thank
and
you.
this time has actually flown by. And like I genuinely mean that part 2, part 3, Moshe.
Sure.
Certainly. We have to do this.
I'd love to be back. I would say thank you for considering to have me on the show.
Thank you for
Celto Acoustics, because I know I was a little apprehensive initially considering our line of business. But Moshe, thank you for also spending the time to explain to me what you were doing. And I think to summarize our entire chat, the idea is to motivate people in these times, regardless of the COVID or not. I feel the last few weeks have been a splendid opportunity to study and to learn. But now that Unlock 1.0, as we are calling it, is in process, it's still a wonderful time to learn. It never ends.
Never.
Opportunity lost is not one that's gone forever. This moment at 6 o'clock, as we close in on the time today, is a start for another opportunity. So thank you very much for at least, I mean, we discussed everything but sound, I think, for the last 2 hours, but it's fantastic to be able to at least share a lot of my thought process, which influences sound design and mixing and whatever I do in the craft. So Siddharth, thank you also for having me on.
Thank
Our
you.
pleasure. Our pleasure.
Thank you, guys. See you. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice evening.